I accidentally caused a war between my family and my brother's wife's family with one innocent text message. My brother's wedding was supposed to be a joyful event, filled with laughter and celebration. But instead of the joyous occasion we'd imagined, the day unfolded into a chaotic mess that left our family divided and hurt. And it all started with a single text message, a message I never thought would set off a chain reaction that would shake our entire family to its core. You might be wondering why I didn't attend the wedding in the first place. It all comes down to my brother's wife's family, a family that's fiercely traditional and, unfortunately, not very welcoming to people who are different. My brother sent me a wedding invitation, hoping I'd be there. He wanted me by his side, sharing in the joy of his big day. But then his fiancée told him that I couldn't come, because I had a boyfriend. I know, it sounds strange, but I'm a guy. A bisexual guy to be exact. My brother and his fiancée were okay with me bringing my boyfriend, but her parents weren't. Her family, you see, is very religious, and their beliefs aren't open to people who are different from them. They would probably have flipped out if I had showed up with my boyfriend. My brother's fiancée knew that, and she knew that if they got wind of me being there, it would cause a huge fight, maybe even make her parents disown her, so she put her foot down and said that I wasn't allowed. After that, my brother told me I couldn't come and explained everything to me. I could have been angry, but to be honest, I was more relieved. I get really nervous in big crowds, and I hate big events, even happy ones. Plus, it's not like it was completely new for me. It's happened before. I've had to skip parties and gatherings because of who I am, because I'm bisexual. This wasn't something new, I was used to it. So, on the wedding day, I stayed home with my boyfriend. We were snuggled up on the couch, watching a movie, just enjoying each other's company. My parents didn't know that I wasn't going to be there. They were all excited for the wedding and couldn't wait to celebrate with everyone. But in the middle of the wedding reception, they realized I wasn't there. My phone buzzed with a text from my parents, asking me where I was. They were confused because I wasn't at the wedding. They had no idea that I was purposely missing the big day. I told my parents I wasn't there. They asked why, and since they hadn't talked to my brother about it yet, they were confused. I told them what my brother's fiancée had said about her parents, and that's why I wasn't there. I explained it all to them, telling them everything about the situation. I didn't think it would be a big deal, you know. It wasn't like I was keeping it a secret, but I guess I forgot how my parents could react, how they could interpret things. Maybe I was being naive. I didn't know that they were so close with my brother's wife's family. I knew that her parents had their own set of rules, but I didn't realize that my parents had become so close to her parents that they would just accept their rules and not try to defend their own kid, you know. They read my text and didn't reply. Honestly, I thought they wouldn't even really notice I wasn't there. After all, they didn't notice for a while at the party itself. I guess it took them a while to catch on that I wasn't there. I didn't expect my absence to become such a huge deal, and honestly, I didn't really understand why my parents cared so much. I wasn't going to the party. That's it. I didn't expect it to be the main topic at the wedding reception, but it was. I couldn't believe it. My parents told my brother what I'd written, and he ended up arguing with his new wife's family about my absence. It was like two different sides formed. One side, with my parents and family, was defending me, supporting me. The other side was defending my brother's new wife and her parents. My brother had to decide to either stand by me or his wife, and it seemed like he sided with her, you know. He seemed upset that I wasn't at the wedding and that my not being there caused drama. I couldn't believe it was turning into such a big deal. I was just sitting at home with my boyfriend, watching a movie. Honestly, at first, it seemed like my brother and his wife's family thought they could get away with doing whatever they wanted and making rules that affected my whole family, but then my family stepped in. A few days later, my parents came over to our place. They looked stressed out, and the second I saw them, I knew that the situation with my brother and his wife's family had gotten worse. It wasn't just a little fight. They told me how my brother's family really tried to start a fight at the wedding, and it almost got physical. It seemed so crazy to me at first, but honestly, I think I was still in shock about the whole thing. The situation was so bad that my brother and his new wife were almost arguing at the wedding. I guess, like a lot of families, they didn't really know how to handle a situation that was new to them, a situation where they felt like someone was trying to limit my freedom. It was more than just me being left out of the wedding. It was about a huge sense of injustice that ran through the family. My parents tried to reason with my brother and make him see how unreasonable my brother's wife's family was being, but he didn't budge. He stood by his wife, and it seemed like the more we tried to make him see things differently, the angrier he got. He seemed angry at me and angry at my parents for trying to do something about it. My mom and dad were so upset, so scared that this could turn into a bigger problem that would tear our whole family apart. And it did. My parents talked to my brother and tried to reason with him, explaining how unfair it was and that his wife's family was being intolerant, but he wasn't interested. He kept siding with his wife. And that's how it started, this whole mess that really put a strain on our family. I didn't think that my little text message, my innocent explanation to my parents about why I couldn't go to the wedding, would create a problem so big, a problem that would drive a wedge between our families and almost start a fight at the wedding. But it did. I felt bad for starting a fight at a wedding, and I knew that I needed to understand why the situation was so difficult for my family and why my brother was acting this way, so I stayed calm and listened to everything my parents told me about what happened at the wedding. It all seemed so dramatic, so insane, so pointless to me, because it wasn't like I was trying to ruin their big day, right? It was their rules, you know, and I never tried to be the center of attention. I didn't mean to do this, and even though I wasn't at the wedding, I was worried. It made me sad to think that my brother and his new wife's family could treat me so badly, that they could try to make me feel like there was something wrong with who I was, you know. It felt like a lot of pressure, knowing how my parents were feeling, how my brother was reacting, knowing that the entire wedding was thrown into chaos, just because I didn't go. And yet, at the same time, I also knew that my absence had sparked something deeper, something more significant than just a simple family argument. It seemed like the fight over my absence at the wedding was bigger than me, a fight that exposed something deeper about my family's beliefs, my brother's beliefs, and a world where intolerance wasn't always understood but often ignored. After the wedding, my brother and his new wife went on their honeymoon. And the drama was far from over. The way things escalated at the wedding was nothing compared to what would happen next. You might think this whole thing would settle down after the wedding, but things didn't calm down, they just got worse. At first, after the wedding, nothing much happened, just the usual family dynamics. But everything changed when my brother and his new wife left on their honeymoon. The moment they left, the terror started, and by terror, I mean the relentless and hateful barrage of messages I began receiving from my brother's wife's family. I couldn't believe how this could happen. They found me online, they'd tracked me down, found my social media accounts and decided to send me the worst kind of insults. I started getting hateful messages, filled with anger, threats, and ignorance. I'd wake up to notifications on my phone, filled with messages attacking me, judging me for who I am, telling me that I'm wrong, telling me that I'm going to hell for loving who I loved. They were attacking my character and my soul. It felt like they were trying to destroy me. I knew, though, that none of it was true. These messages were vicious and hurtful, but at that point, I wasn't surprised, not really. I'm used to dealing with hate, you know. It wasn't something new, but this felt different because I was dealing with my own family, a family I was connected to by blood, who should have been accepting of me. I tried to ignore these messages at first. I tried to make them meaningless to me, to brush them off as hurtful but ultimately harmless. But, deep down, it hurt so bad. It made me feel less than ashamed of myself. And they weren't just attacking me, they were attacking my boyfriend, too. They sent him messages just like the ones they sent to me, full of judgment and threats. At first, my boyfriend seemed confused, kind of shocked at the way they were acting, like it was totally absurd. He didn't get how anyone could act that way, how anyone could judge me for loving him and just not letting him live his life happily. It felt so crazy to him, so bizarre. When he received the first set of messages, he just read them over and over again, like they couldn't possibly be real. It took him a while to believe that anyone would be so mean, so hateful, to us. I don't know if he was shocked or disappointed in his wife's family, but he was really hurt by how much hatred there was. Then it hit him. This wasn't just about my brother's family's values. It was about how bigoted the world still is, how ignorance could exist within families, among loved ones, how hate could still be so common. I didn't think we'd be attacked in such a vicious way, and it made my heart hurt to know how much pain this would cause both of us. It reminded me of so many past experiences. There were moments I didn't think I would make it, moments when hate threatened to consume me, moments when the prejudice in the world almost shattered me. It felt like they were trying to turn my heart to stone. It felt unfair, you know, that these messages could find me, that they could make their way to my inbox and fill it with ugliness. I never asked for this, I never wanted to deal with this hate. But then, my boyfriend reminded me, I have to fight back. It felt like a moment of awakening, like I had to wake up to the reality of the world and start protecting myself and the person I loved. It felt terrifying, to be honest, facing down these messages, but it felt like a turning point for me, a moment where I realized how far my strength had come, how far I'd come since being so deeply hurt in the past. This time, I wouldn't be silenced. I wouldn't just go quiet. I took screenshots of all of the hateful messages and sent them to my brother. I had to do it. I was sick of the silence, sick of feeling helpless. It felt like if I didn't stand up for myself, if I didn't push back against the hate, no one else would. But my brother's reaction was more hurtful than the messages themselves. He didn't get it, didn't care, didn't seem to grasp the depth of the hurt these messages were causing me. He even had the audacity to tell me to stop bothering him with this trash during his honeymoon. It was as if my pain and hurt meant nothing to him. You're supposed to stand by your siblings, protect your family. That's what's supposed to happen, right? But here I was, being rejected by the person who should have loved me the most, who should have protected me. I didn't know what to do. I'd already dealt with this, with bigotry, prejudice, and the constant need to defend my sexuality. I was tired. It felt like it was always going to be a battle, always a struggle to fight for who I was and who I loved. And yet, I didn't give up. I couldn't give up. I couldn't help but wonder how my brother could become so quick to dismiss what was happening, to ignore me, to put the blame on me, even though I didn't do anything wrong. But then I realized, in this situation, he didn't get to make the rules anymore. He'd crossed a line where he decided to pick his wife over his family, over his brother, over a simple truth. I wanted to be angry at him, to lash out and demand he take me seriously, but the only emotion I could feel was utter heartbreak. There is something truly heartbreaking about being rejected by your brother, you know, especially over something that is so personal, so important. My brother chose his wife over his blood, and the messages his family sent me proved how easy it was for him to choose his new family over his own. Then, my mom called him. I didn't hear what she said, but my brother sent me a text apologizing. But his apology wasn't sincere. I knew he only sent it because my mom had called and pressured him. The reality was, he wasn't taking this seriously. I knew it wasn't enough. But I felt trapped. It was as if I was a prisoner of my brother's loyalty. It was clear that he had a side to take, and I was on the other. It was like he'd chosen to join his wife's side and condemn me for just being me. A few days after the messages started, a woman I didn't know called me. Her voice was gentle but filled with an apologetic tone. She introduced herself as my brother's wife's half-sister. It took me a moment to understand what she was saying, to understand why she would call me. I felt like this was the end. But then, it occurred to me, it wasn't the end, it was a chance to see the other side of the story. She apologized for her family's actions and said that she knew how terrible they'd been, how hurtful the messages were, how unfair they were being to me and my boyfriend. And she was right. The messages were terrible, hateful, mean, filled with threats and lies, and they were just wrong. But in that moment, while she was apologizing for her family's cruelty, I understood. Her apology wasn't a sign of weakness. It wasn't about giving in to what they'd done. It was a moment of clarity, a moment where she recognized that her family was being horrible, that their hateful actions were inexcusable, and that she couldn't stand by them anymore. It wasn't an easy thing to do. I understood that. She was choosing to distance herself from her family, and I felt sympathy for her because I knew that I would probably end up in a similar situation at some point in my life. It reminded me of my brother, how easy it was for him to cut off ties with me over this. She said she wouldn't tell her family that she'd called me. It seemed as if she was worried about the backlash she would get if her family found out about the call. I didn't blame her. I understood the fear that she might be feeling. Her apology meant more to me than just her words. It showed me that the world was still filled with hope, but her family wasn't done. It was more than just hate messages. It was a pattern of cruelty, an insidious pattern of ignorance that I knew was still prevalent in the world, a world that had just gotten bigger and more frightening in the aftermath of my brother's wedding. My mom was getting more and more upset, determined to do something about this hateful family. I didn't understand why this would impact us so much, but I knew my mom was always looking out for me, and that's why I let her. My mom told me she wanted to report the insults and the harassment from my brother's wife's family, to take action and stop them from making me their target. She said if my brother didn't get a divorce from his wife, then she would take him out of her will. At first, my mom's response seemed like a huge overreaction, a radical move, even an exaggeration. I felt hesitant. I was tired of the drama. It wasn't about the money for me, but I felt trapped. This was bigger than me. I was concerned, worried that this whole thing would go on, becoming a bigger problem, driving a wider wedge in our family. But I understood my mother's need to protect me, to make sure this behavior wouldn't be accepted. My mother always taught me to be courageous, and I knew that in this moment, she was being true to that lesson. I was caught in the middle, watching my family tear itself apart over a simple message. I just wanted it all to stop, for everything to be okay. I knew my parents loved me and supported me, but the situation with my brother and my brother's wife's family just kept getting worse. My mother, determined to fight against the hatred of my brother's wife's family, decided to press charges. She told me she was reporting their messages to the police, their words of hate and their actions, to hold them accountable. I was a bit surprised that my mom was going that far, that she wanted to press charges, but the more I thought about it, the more I understood. This wasn't about them just being mean. They'd invaded our privacy, trying to track me down, send me hateful messages, harass me, and try to spread hate about me and my relationship. I felt violated. I didn't ask for this, they did this to me. It was about them taking away my freedom to love who I wanted and to be happy. And they had a choice, right? They could have kept quiet. But they didn't. They chose to attack me, to harass me, to fill my life with hate. They felt entitled, like they had the right to do that they had the right to control who I loved and how I lived. It felt so unfair that they'd put me in this position. I never wanted to cause a fight, to put my parents in this difficult situation, to have them upset with my brother, to create tension within my own family, but this was what their hate had brought upon me, a situation I never wanted, and one I could never have foreseen. But in a way, I knew this wasn't just my fight. This was my parents' fight too. This was my brother's fight. This was everyone's fight. It was a fight about acceptance, about respecting people who are different from you, about believing in a world that is accepting of people who are different. It was about finding a balance where we all get along, a world where everyone is safe. And we did. My mom pressed charges. My parents stood up for me and helped me find a new home, a place where I felt safe from those who had hurt me so badly. My parents didn't just stand by and let them attack me. They defended me and my freedom, even though it caused turmoil within the family, even though it hurt them, too. The report ended up going to court. And we won. My brother's wife's family had to pay for their actions. It was hard to believe. It felt like justice had been served, you know? It felt like a turning point in the whole saga, a sign that things might be turning around. It wasn't just about the money, even though it did make me feel that I had won, that I wasn't just letting them control my life, that they were held accountable for their actions. But the victory was bigger than that. They lost their social media accounts and were no longer able to contact me. Their hateful words, their threats, their harassment were gone. And I couldn't have been more relieved. There was one thing that really bothered me, though. There was an incident where my brother's wife's father had tried to track me down to find my address. He actually asked my brother for my address, even though my brother knew it wasn't a good idea to give my address to this man. I felt sick when I heard this. I didn't know what his father might have done to me. I could only imagine how he could have reacted, how he might have tried to hurt me, to put me in danger, to silence me. My heart was racing, knowing he was so close to finding me. I was scared that this was how it was going to end, that he'd find me and cause me harm. Thankfully, this happened right before my boyfriend and I moved, right before my brother's wife's father got my address, right before he could have hurt me. It was a relief to escape, to find a new home where I was safe, a new place that didn't feel so heavy with the weight of this entire situation. My boyfriend was happy, too. It felt like we had found a safe haven where we could finally be ourselves, where no one could reach us and try to make us feel ashamed or threatened for who we were. Our new home felt like a place of refuge, and I knew I needed to do something to make sure that my brother's wife's father never found us. It was like the story hadn't ended. It was only just beginning. It seemed like my parents had made good on their threat to my brother. After he got back from his honeymoon, he was still adamant that he wasn't going to divorce his wife. My mom knew how serious he was and followed through with her promise. She took him out of her will, and my dad did the same. It felt harsh to me, to watch this happen, to watch my family break apart, to watch my brother get cut out of my parents' will. My brother pleaded with my parents, telling them he had made a mistake, asking them to put him back in the will, to forgive him. He seemed desperate, but my mom stood her ground. She told him that the only way he could be back in the will was if he apologized to me. My mom felt like this was the only way for my brother to show that he actually understood how serious the situation was, that he wasn't going to stand by his wife's family's bigotry anymore. My mom had an unwavering belief in my worth and in my right to be respected and defended by my family. I tried to convince my parents to forgive him, to give him another chance, but they refused. My parents said he needed to prove he was sorry, that he was trying to change, that he wasn't going to just accept his wife's family's hateful beliefs. To prove their point, they invited my boyfriend and me over to their place. My brother, nervous and clearly defeated, sat there staring at his feet, avoiding my gaze. My mom made him apologize. She insisted. He mumbled half-hearted words of regret, "I'm sorry," but his words didn't mean anything to me. My heart was full of disappointment. My brother wasn't sorry for his actions. He only apologized because my parents forced him to. He was ashamed, but he wasn't sorry. It wasn't a true apology, it was just a way to try to repair the damage he had already done. I told my brother that I was really disappointed in him, in how much he had changed, and I wanted to make sure that he understood how much his actions had hurt me, how hurtful it was for him to side with those who had targeted me and my boyfriend. The truth was, it felt like he wasn't my brother anymore. He wasn't the same person he used to be. He didn't react, didn't offer any explanations or justifications, didn't even look me in the eye. He just sat there, his head down, unwilling to accept responsibility, unable to look me in the eye and face the consequences of his choices. After that, he left without saying a word. That was the last time I saw my brother. It's been weeks, and he hasn't reached out. I'm still hurting from this situation, from the messages, from the lack of support from my brother. My heart feels broken in a way I never imagined. I know I have a right to feel hurt and to feel like this was unfair, but I also realize that my family, my parents, have always had my back. And this has been their fight, too. They know my struggle as a queer person, they've learned so much about who I am and the discrimination I face. And my parents, they never stopped loving me. My dad even got me a bisexual pride flag, and asked if he could hang it in my room. He said that he was proud of me, proud of my love, proud of who I am. But in all of this, my heart aches for my brother. It felt like my brother had become a stranger. It felt like he was a different person now, one I didn't even know. I miss the old him, the brother who would have defended me without question, the brother who wouldn't have let people attack me. As for my brother's wife's half-sister, she was also a victim of the hate within her family. She was brave, courageous, and it was painful to know that she had to choose between her family and standing up for what was right. I lost contact with her, and it's been hard not to worry about what happened to her after she bravely took that step to apologize for her family's actions. I don't know what will happen next. I'm not sure if I'll ever talk to my brother again, but I know that I can't give up. I have to keep fighting, for myself, for my boyfriend, for the entire queer community, and for a world that is accepting, loving, and supportive. This is a fight for my freedom to love who I want, and for the right of everyone to live their life authentically. It's a fight that we have to win. This story started with a single text message, a message that set off a chain reaction that broke our family apart. But it wasn't just a text message that I sent. It was a reflection of my identity, a reflection of who I am. It was a sign of my strength, of my resilience, of my willingness to stand up for myself and fight back against hate. This whole thing has made me realize that it's important to choose to be with the people who love you, to stand up for what you believe in, to defend yourself against hate, and to have hope that our world can become a better, safer, and more accepting place.